All right, what's up, you guys? Welcome to the Righteous and Real podcast, where we decide to bring people on who impact the community in a positive way, and where we can actually make a difference and transform lives, not just physically, but spiritually. I have an amazing guest today, my man Nathan, the Situation on Instagram. And I'm going to make sure to shout every single person out because I still can't forget the best person I've ever had. I feel like one of the best people on my podcast, and I forgot to mention Austin's at. So if you watch the whole way through, I forgot to mention him. But today it's Nathan at Nathan the Situation way. So your full name is Nathan, right?
Yeah, it's Nathan.
Okay, so what made you come up with Nathan the Situation?
Oh wow, that's
I don't know why that just popped up in my head right now.
I used to go out a lot with friends that were older than me. It's actually funny because if I trail back, like a lot of my friends have always been a good 4 to 5 years ahead of me. So back then we would go to parties like maybe Saturday, Sunday, and this was during like when I was big on religion and I was actually going. So it was more friends that were in our congregation and whatnot. So we would go to parties in like Stockton, San Jose, Fresno, all that. And there was a party that we threw here in Fresno. I forgot what the girl's name, but it was the Coachella party. So we wanted to make a video, and I'm pretty sure if I like scroll through my feed I can find it, and it was more of I was in the intro and I was like, yo, this your boy Nathan the Situation, we're outside what's her name house, and this is a Coachella party, and then it would just dive right into like the whole mosh pit on the inside. And it wasn't more like a huge rager party because granted it was still Christian. We did get in trouble for that party, by the way.
That's funny.
But that's how that started. And then like going into fitness, I was like, hey, what should I put my Instagram as? And one of the guys was like, why don't you just do that?
Mm-hmm. Well,
so
all the guys around you were at Too Aesthetic, at Pod
so
by Prod.
Like,
everybody's coming up with like these usernames that are kind of edgy and like different. And you come out and you came up with Nathan the Situation.
Yeah.
The first thing I think of when I hear that name though is like something bad's gonna happen. I don't know why. Like it's like Nathan the Situation. You know what I mean? Like something's about to go down. You know what I mean?
Be nice to him, bro.
I'm just saying.
Coming from me at the beginning of the podcast.
I know,
already.
I'm just saying. Every time I think about it, I'm like Nathan the Situation.
Yeah, 100%.
But that was the point, right?
But at the same time, too, like back then, I wouldn't get in trouble, but I would always cause some type of like, not necessarily scene, but there was always something that happened.
But now you can cause good trouble.
No, 100%.
That now
at least I think so. Yeah.
So in your sense, now that you're a coach, it's Nathan the Situation, not because something bad's about to go down, but because
I'm bringing a situation.
Something's about to go down, but that doesn't mean it has to be negative. Now it's positive. Now you're impacting people, coaching people up, and getting them not just to their best physical selves, but even prepping people to be on stage. So how's that process been from like going from, hey, I'm just a coach, lifestyle, whatever, and then getting influenced by all the people around you, right? And then like trying to like think about you in that spot as well. Okay, well, maybe there's all these people around me who are inspiring me to not only want to compete, but help others compete. So how has that process been?
I think it's a lot more natural. And granted, like I'm not perfect, and I don't think any coach is perfect. And I'm very grateful for the people that I have around me because I have so many like-minded individuals that are good at what they do. One of the ones that you just had on has coached me before. His name's Austin. Another one too. Actually, hopefully by the time that you guys release this, I already tell them people. But Prob's actually going to start coaching me pretty soon too. Now too. But with their types of training and their types of nutrition, I've also been able to contribute it to my own. Because before then I was coached by somebody completely different, and it was a different type of style of training. So now I'm a lot more confident with what I do compared to like the first times that I did it. I feel like we always struggle with like, are we doing this the right way? Could I be doing this differently? But at the end of the day, you kind of just have to trust yourself. And I think this time around, this past show that we just had at Fresno, I did trust myself way more than I have in the past. And it's just more in the sense because I prepared a lot more 6 months, 8 months prior to this, and just kind of seeing it all unfold and just play out. So it's definitely been a journey, kind of like how we had talked about in the beginning of like struggling with your self-esteem and struggling with yourself.
Before we even recorded this podcast, we were talking about self-esteem and just how sometimes I always say the word, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
almost as a way to ask for self-validation because
Yeah.
I'm, my self-esteem isn't very high. So I feel like I need that validation. So
100%.
you're saying you kind of relate to that?
I can relate to that, honestly. And if I'm being completely transparent, like there's times where I'll ask like Austin, I'll ask problem like, hey, like, do you think that this is the right move for me to make? And they'll continuously remind me like, dude, like, you know what you're doing. Like, you've put bikini girls on stage before. Like, you know what to do with the bikini girl. Like, just do it. Don't doubt yourself. Just do it. Trust yourself. And sometimes I got to remind myself of that. And it's just more in the sense because, like, I still focus on trying to learn as much as I can. And I don't think that I will ever obtain that much information that we can, because there's always information coming out. But yeah, that's one thing that I do struggle with.
Do you feel like when you reflect on that thought process that you're speaking about right now, do you feel like that's a sense of not only proving it to others, but proving something to yourself? Or do you think it's more proving it to yourself rather than others?
I think it's more proving it to myself, because I think that thought in itself, it's a strong, powerful thought that it can either have somebody completely doubt themselves to the point where they don't complete the task that they're trying to do, or they don't continue doing what they're doing. Or they can use it in a positive way and say, oh, okay, this is going to make me go even harder or learn even more or even try 10 times than what I would have thought. And that's honestly what it does for me, is more in the sense of it puts a fire under me I got to make sure I don't like fall behind, or if I don't lack in certain areas.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a growth mindset. And I was just talking to somebody else about this the other day, about having a growth mindset, as actually at the gym we train at. And it sounds like you have that type of mindset. You have a mindset where you feel like you constantly have to grow. And if you're not growing, you're actually losing traction, right? So what has helped you grow that growth mindset? Has it been anything like maybe your parents, people around you, friends, family?
I definitely think it's the people around me. I don't think it's necessarily family. I think family has contributed a lot to my mindset, but one of the ones is I think it was past 4 years ago, I came in, actually no, I think it was back in 2018. I met somebody, I worked for him, his name's Edgar Espino. So he has his own clothing brand called Iron Bullies, and he owns a supplement shop called LA Sports Nutrition. That's one of the first supplement shops that I started working at. And at the time, I struggled talking in person. I struggled making eye contact. I struggled like with a lot of things. And it was more in the sense of like he guided me with building my self-esteem and letting me like actually see my self-worth and what I'm actually capable of. And he contributed a lot to more in the sense of like, you need to make sure that you're continuously growing as a man, whether it's in business, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's with like family in general. Like that, he had a big role to play in why my mindset is the way it is.
So he had a big part in your transformation,
100%.
Edgar. And I mean, he's amazing.
100%.
Like, I would go into Iron Bullies, and he was always the individual to just inspire you, pour positivity into you. And do you feel like he's poured enough positivity into you, or is he still constantly pouring that positivity?
I think I learned something from him not necessarily every time that I see him, because sometimes we're all obviously joking around too, but from the most part, there's always something that I'm learning from him. And he's probably one of the people that you can ask who I was back then to who I am now. And I'm grateful for it 100%, but he had a big role to play into it.
Is there anybody else or anything else that has also played a role in kind of what we're kind of talking about? Not just the physical transformation that you've made, right? Because you weren't always as fit as you are, and you weren't always a trainer, you weren't always a coach, and you're talking about a lot more about more personal transformation when it comes from like a mindset, maybe even a spiritual point. You know what I mean? What else have you done, or what else has influenced you to make a more positive transformation, not just physically?
It wouldn't be more like positive, I want to say, but I think growing up without my actual biological father in the picture, I would always kind of like try to see, okay, well, what's the actual man? What's the head of the house? What's that look like? So for me, I always had like really bad representations of what that would look like. So it was never looking for something good. It was like, what do I not do? So from grabbing that and finding that was more in the sense of like, okay, well, now I got to build an ideal image of what I think a real man should look like, or try to pursue what that is. So it was never really like I had a good, not necessarily experience,
Example.
I never had a really good example. I just had a really bad example of what not to do. So I still don't think that I'm the best, but I still try to do my best to make it the best situation.
So like, I started training at Synergy in 2020, and 2020, and I remember walking in, and there is still a lot of individuals who train there. Matter of fact, like even more so. And I know Synergy isn't the only gym that you've coached your clients at and whatnot. I remember obviously walking in, and there's a lot of individuals who train there and coach there. Austin, Lejean, Javon, a lot of people now. You know what I mean? Back then it was only a few people. But I remember back then you were a little bit more closed off. And I remember talking to you a little bit about this not too long ago when we had met up and just had a conversation at Cup of Joy Coffee in here in Central Valley. A few different locations, and one of the best coffee places ever. but you know what I mean. But
not a sponsored ad.
Not a
sponsored ad.
But glory to God. But after we had that conversation, we chatted a little bit about like that change in you.
Yeah.
Like again, when I first met you, you seemed very closed off.
Yeah.
Why?
Damn.
That's good, huh?
He wanted to jump right into that one. Personally, I think it was just more in the sense of...
You can be real, bro. This is the 100%. Righteous and Real podcast.
100%. I come from a very religious background, a very strict religious background. So the close people around me know I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. And from that stemmed a lot of like my habits of being strict with my diet, being strict with certain areas of my life. But in a sense, it added so much positivity towards my character development, but at the same time, it also like put me in a spot to where I had to isolate myself to be the person that I want to be today. And it took away from me being in touch with God. So at the time that you met me, it was more in the sense of business, clients, the stage. So
you were just not even in the mindset to comprehend anything else besides what you were doing in that moment, which was business. And do you feel like, I know you said your dad was a big business person, right?
Correct.
So do you feel like that was the influence as to why you felt like it had to be about business?
For the most part, yes. I tell a lot of people is when they ask me, is like my relationship with my dad was more professional than it was like father-son type. He raised me as a businessman. And it was never more in the sense of like you would never catch me outside playing catch with him. It was always like more, we're either in San Jose, we're either in Sacramento, we're either here, we're either there working, and while I was on my break, I was doing classwork, and I'd be in the truck just knocking it out 11 o'clock, then going back to work.
So did you have a social life when it came to school and stuff like that? Or?
From a period of, I think me and him were just talking about this a little bit before, like I think it was sophomore year to senior year, my social life was more between family and people through religion. So there was never like actual like school, prom, all that type of stuff.
So as a Jehovah's Witness, I know this is probably a much deeper conversation than maybe you thought, but from a Jehovah's Witness perspective, do you feel like you're kind of shut out from the social world in a sense?
From a younger age, yes,
Okay.
because they're very big on keeping everything directly from how it was in the Bible. So if, it's actually funny because I personally never asked this question, but somebody had brought it up. I forgot where we were at. I think we were at a pastor's for, it was like 2 weeks ago. I was with Brent, and they had said that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate Christmas, they don't celebrate birthdays, they don't celebrate this, they don't celebrate that, because it's not something that they've earned. And I never really asked why we never celebrated anything. It was just more in the sense, oh, we don't do that. Oh, okay. So don't participate when I'm at school? No. Okay. So that was a question that I never asked, but it did have a big role to why I isolated myself a lot more growing up. So going into like bodybuilding, whenever the coach or whoever was coaching me at the time would say like, can't go out, can't eat this, can't eat that, stay at home. Okay. Because my mindset was already there from, if I'm told to do something, then you have to do it.
Right. And it's the same mindset a lot of people have. I can relate to you in a sense where Christianity, and I know Jehovah's Witness is a form of Christianity, but the Christianity I believe in is just the Bible alone, and we have to really take that as a personal relationship with Jesus
100%.
Christ, and so with that, there's a lot of things in the Bible that people look at as, oh, these are the rules that you need to follow, and really you should look at it like it's like a personal relationship with Jesus, and how did Jesus live his life,
100%,
and what decisions did he make, and how can I make the same or just decisions hopefully like his in a sense. But to your point, for me growing up at my church, it was always, and not just my church but my family and people who were my Christian influences in life would say, don't have sex before marriage. And to your point, it's like, why?
100%.
Why? Or you know what I mean? Or don't, the Bible says to be evenly yoked. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that you shouldn't date somebody outside of the religion. Well, why? Right? And I think you have these questions as you're a kid, and maybe they were willing to answer those questions, but you also weren't willing to ask the questions. No. You know what I mean? And so if you don't know what you don't know. And I think it is important to always have context to why you're saying something. And so that's why I like having Christianity, because there's always context. And I feel like without that, you're just saying how you feel. And I feel like that only has so much validation to it. Feeling is important, and it is important to have emotion and be in tune with your feelings. But at some point, you have to have some sort of context, and something to back up your belief. Does that make sense?
It does. I think also too, like, me now stepping away from it, because I don't think I'll go from here time to time. Like recently, we just had the commemoration of Jesus Christ where they pass the wine and pass the bread and whatnot, and I'll go to the bigger events like that, but I won't actually be present when they're doing like group things or anything like that. And if I go to the church itself, I won't stay after to like mingle with anybody, just because a part of me is more in the sense of like, you guys saw me for a different type of person, and now you hear like, oh, Nate's doing this, Nate's doing that in Fresno, like he's bigger on the business side of things, and that was completely contrary of where my route was taking me when I was going to church. Because if you ask anybody that knew me when I was younger, there's pictures of me taking out like the service group where we would go out and preach whatnot, and I was like 13 of a group of like 60 people just taking out the ministry, and I would be nervous as heck, but I would always do it more in the sense because that's how I was taught. But that's also why I don't go. But kind of piggybacking off of what you had said about the whole no sex before marriage, like a lot of the things that they're very big on were no sex before marriage, adultery is bad, all the stuff that you already know. So I think like now that me stepping away from there and being out for X amount of years, I now understand why those rules were there and set into place by the Bible, by God. Because like now we can look around in society and like relationships aren't taken seriously. There's so much things that if people just followed things by the Bible, their life would be way better.
Yeah, you're taking words right out of my mouth, man. And so well, that's literally why I created the podcast, was because I feel like we're in a generation where there's a loss of morals and values. And I get it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, man. I'm not saying I started this podcast because I'm the most righteous and real person. You know what I mean? But what I am saying is I just want to put it out there that, hey, there's this way to live life, and you don't have to be perfect, but it's great to have a little bit of feedback when you feel like, man, am I doing the right thing? We just talked about earlier the self-doubt of us thinking if we're doing the right thing or executing the right thing in our life or not. And a lot of the time the Bible has those answers, but if you kind of go into this mindset into every conversation where they have their opinion, I have my opinion, and and it doesn't matter, right? You can just be right all the time. I always say this, I'd be the most stubborn and crazy, like, bad husband, father, because I'd be so stubborn. I would never be wrong if I didn't have the Bible. You know what I mean? And so, I feel like we're in a generation where we're definitely missing a lot of morals and values. And I feel that this is why we need something where we can have just open conversation about it. And you see it, right? Like, I don't even have to talk about it. And there's already this other but other group of people who are already retaliating against what we grew up with, which was the opposite of values, morals, that kind of stuff. Because how old are you?
23.
23. So I'm 24. I turned 24 in September last year. And so, you know, we grew up in the same exact generation. Our culture was more so directed upon, hey, like, independency, do what you want, whatever you feel like doing, do that. You know what I mean? And I feel like it just comes with so many caveats.
100%.
You know what I mean? And so, and with that, it's just something that I feel like it's good to have people who actually stand up and say something like, hey, you know what? Like, I actually don't think, you know, not having morals is the best idea. You know what I mean? Not just for our spiritual health, but like physically. You know what I mean?
I think it has a big role to play in like the type of, not necessarily economy, but the type of people you surround yourself with. Because I think Fresno is very big on like, well, if they're doing it, then I'm going to do it. Nobody can really think for themselves. And I think that's a very big thing with our generation, is where it's like, if one of your friends is doing it, then it seems as cool. If they're not doing it, then don't do it. Like, think for yourself. If you don't want to play that sport, don't play that sport. If you don't want to wear those clothes, don't wear those clothes. If you don't want to have that haircut, I mean, I think we can all literally go into the gym and they all have the same haircut. It's like, develop your own personality. And that's one thing that I'm big on, is if somebody doesn't do what I do, that's completely fine. I think that helped me out in that generation of growing up and getting into fitness. Was when I was getting into working out was 2017. And this is when Jeremy Buendia was barely turned Mr. Olympia. And in my head, it was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to look like that. I want type of sponsorship, stuff like that. And at the time, nobody our age was going to the gym. Everybody looked at it as like, why am I going to go to the gym? Now, I think it's so dope to see how many people that go to high school, their freshman year, sophomore year, are in the gym wearing Gymshark, wearing Young LA, all that type of stuff. Because, it's seen as cool now, but it's more in the sense of they see it being in shape and putting their health first as cool. Which back then, growing up, like, everybody looked at me like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing cardio? Why don't you just come out? You know?
Yeah, you look like the crazy person
100%.
when you're eating healthy, when you're doing the cardio, when you're training every day. People look at you like you're doing almost like you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is really funny to me. And you talked a little bit about how the generation now is there's almost like a trend of wanting to be fit. You know what I mean? Which is really awesome.
I think it's dope.
I think it came from COVID. Honestly.
I definitely think so too.
Yeah,
I definitely think
everybody
so too.
being so packed inside and maybe not understanding, maybe realizing actually how sad and depressed you can get if you're just in a room in a house alone doing nothing, and then seeing the benefit that comes from training. It's like when you don't have something, you end up missing it finally. I forget how exactly you say it, but you don't realize what you have until you lose it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how they say it. So once everybody lost the ability to go to the gym, everybody wants to go to the gym. And now that everybody has the ability, I mean, I thank God there's more people that go. Yeah. But there's still those people who, well, now it's here, so I can go anytime. 100%. It's open 24 hours. You know, it's only $10 at Planet Fitness, and which is a detriment to, having a gym so cheap can also be a detriment, right? Yeah. Because then you're thinking, oh, well, I can.
What kind of quality information is going to be in there? Like, what actual type of equipment is going to be in there? And some people might even use it in the sense of like it's just a place to hang out.
Yeah.
They have like pizza parties there.
At Planet Fitness?
That's right.
I don't know, dude. I've heard about that.
I heard about
yeah. I don't mind. I mean, I think Planet Fitness is great especially for people who start out, but I think if you're going to become very serious about it, I mean, you can go really far as far as working out at any 100%. Gym, even a Planet Fitness. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm just saying if you're giving out pizza, that's not probably a good thing.
It's funny though, because I competed in San Diego during COVID in 2021, and I've always heard like, oh, Planet Fitness, they have the alarms and they have like this, they have like so many rules. Yeah. And the only gym, I think they had just jumped into like a purple code or red code. There's a code where it was like, oh, like the population, there's a higher chance of COVID. So the gym that was next to the venue that I was competing at that weekend was a 24-hour fitness, and I was like, dude, like I have to get a workout in, So me and my buddy Shane was the owner of the old facility that I used to train at. We went across, And somebody had came up to me and I was resting in between sets, and he was like, "Hey, you have to wait on the side." And I'm like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, like everybody, whenever they finish their sets, they wait on the side of the wall, and then somebody else can jump in and do it, and then when you're done resting, you can come back." And I was like, I thought they were just joking with me, and then so I was like, "All right, whatever." And all I hear is alarm go off, and I was like,
it was on you?
It was on me, and I was like, he comes up to me, he was like, "Yeah, you have to go to the side of the wall, so just make sure you do that again, and it won't turn on." And I'm like, "You're joking, dude, really?"
When you finish your set?
Yeah, so when you finish your set and you're waiting in between, like that 45 seconds, minute rest period, yeah, you got to go to the wall, and then wait there while somebody else can take it at Planet Fitness.
Powerlifters would be screwed, bro.
Dude, I was like
resting 4 or 5 minutes.
But I was like, I thought he was joking with me at first, and I go, "Yeah." He was like, "That's a rule." He was like, "So that way everybody can have an equal turn." And I go,
It's not
"What?"
participation trophy kind of.
Dude, really? And I was like,
That's so
I was 2 days out of a show just trying to get an arm workout in,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Bro, I'm not having this."
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're like, I'll do some body weight stuff.
I
I'll
should
do
have just
some-
stayed in the hotel and did some push-ups and called it a day.
For real. I mean, honestly, towards the show too. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
You probably don't even want to do
No.
as much as
No.
people think they do. They are trying to milk every single
Muscle
ounce.
group.
Yeah, exactly. With all their energy and
Well, because if you do that, you won't have any energy to flex.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, like 3 days out. I mean, I think it was Thursday, and I was barely starting my carb up. At that point, you're just trying to get blood into your muscle. You're just trying to shuttle all that food that you've been eating for throughout that day into it, so that way it can start to like come to life again and pop.
And then depending on the category that you are competing
doing.
in, right, you're probably going to want to pump in certain areas
Yep.
on certain days. And so
Yeah.
you start to get real specific on that, I'm sure. You know what I mean? Like when I was competing and I did my prep, my split the last week was a specific way. You know, I hit certain muscle groups towards the end of the week
Yeah.
and towards the beginning of the week and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably super important to do that so that you don't go on stage looking like a fool. You know what I
100%,
mean?
yeah.
But on top of that, like, you know, carbing up and doing all the proper things, but to kind of talk about all the all the training, all this kind of stuff, the religion we've talked about a little bit as well, and just why you're Nate, the situation, you know what I mean? We know it's a good thing now, it's a positive thing. But kind of to just taper back down to remember a second ago when I asked you, why were you so closed off? So now that you're at a point where you're not as closed off, are you still working to be, as like even more open and even more so this, or are you at a point where you finally feel like you've reached, okay, I'm the individual, I'm a lot better than I was before. I'm not a closed off individual. Like, do you categorize yourself as just a very open individual, like an extrovert now, or?
No, I'm definitely very much an introvert. Me and Brent were actually having a conversation about this. Because I see so many people and have so many communication with different clients, there's times where like I just want to be home. And some people might think that I'm an extrovert just because of the type of like I'll be in the gym and I'll say hi to here, have conversations there, all that. But me personally, I just like being by myself. So that's something that I do like continuously on a day-to-day, like not necessarily battle with, but it's more in the sense of like step out of your comfort zone and make sure you have that conversation. Because there's sometimes where I'll be in the gym and somebody will keep making eye contact with me and I'm just like, why do you keep looking at me? But it's also, I got to realize like in the position that I'm in, I have to be willing to go up and like, hey, do you need help with like a spot or anything like that? Because there's people that will look at you, and I'm pretty sure you have people come up to you in the gym and ask you certain questions, but some people are intimidated to ask for advice, whether it's like nutrition, training, or even for like a spot. So, and I think it also stems from like a little bit of what we talked about COVID, of not having that communication between people. So pushing myself to step out of my own comfort zone and actually initiate conversations is a thing that I struggle with the most, and it's more in the sense of like just do it, because you never know what positive impact that might come from. Whether it's like somebody that they might follow you on social media and see like a lot of things, like when you post your clients' transformations, whenever I post mine, and they might just genuinely want advice. But some people aren't like willing to go up to you. So me, it's more in the sense of like I'll say hi, it doesn't cost me anything to wave or smile at somebody. Yeah. And it can literally open the door for them to having a positive conversation with you.
When I had Austin on, that was one of the first things I told him in the beginning of the podcast was, you've had the most welcoming attitude ever. Like the moment you meet him, he smiles. You know what I mean? I think that's something that can be learned, but it's also, if it comes natural, you can tell. You know what I mean?
That man, that it comes natural. For me, it's more in the sense I want to have a hoodie on and go about my business.
Yeah.
But I step out, like now, especially at the JB gym that I've been training at, I don't train with headphones on. I don't even work out with headphones on, just because, like, yeah, you want to isolate yourself and just focus on your workout, but at the same time, like, it's opening the door for somebody to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. So with everything we talked about, I'm actually curious on some of the clients that you've prepped in the past. I know you coach a lot of women, and you've prepped a lot of women to go on stage. So how is that process mentally for a woman, and how does it differ from a man? You know, when a man is prepping, I'm just curious. I know we've chatted a little bit about it, but if we could just talk about it more in depth.
I think you'd be surprised, because you'd think, yes, women are naturally emotional, but I've also had guys that are very more emotional than a lot of my female clients, and that's completely fine, because I'm an emotional person itself. And there's sometimes where I'll have Austin like, hey, like, how do I look? Are we good? Like, you know. But when it comes to like training my actual bikini clients, like, is it good? But no, like recently, the one that I put on stage recently, her name's Cynthia. That girl herself, like, I told her too, like, because she started off with me at 150 pounds and we got her down to 114. And I told her, this whole journey, I don't think you wouldn't have been able to do if your mindset wasn't in the right spot, because she does real estate. She just bought her own house. Like, she is the definition of like a boss lady. And I told her, all that it took you to create that, you poured it into this, and it's added such a positive impact on you, because honestly, not a lot of girls are willing to be able to go from point A to point B, let alone do a competition prep. So I think it all depends, not necessarily on a female to male standpoint. I think it just depends on where they're at in their life, to where it's like, are they in a good relationship with their spouse or their partner? Are they good when it comes to like financially? Are they good when it comes to their mental their mental health as well? I think that's one of the bigger roles, instead of them just being a male or female. But that's also, when it comes to them hormonally and all that, that's more on the sensitive side compared to a male.
So you're talking a little bit more about mentality,
100%.
Just having the right mentality for it. Don't you think that some people have the mentality, and then maybe some people just aren't built for it, maybe don't have the mentality to do it? Because I know some people can develop the mentality, but, you know, do you feel like it's something that people just have, or do you feel like it's something that can truly be developed over time?
I think it's both. I think you can develop it over time, and I think some people just have it in them. One of my other clients, he's a male, like, that man, he likes being put through it. Like, if he's not suffering, then he doesn't want it. And sometimes I got to remind him, like, bro, like, it's not always about just struggling. Like, this should be as smooth as possible if you're in a good spot. But there's some people that don't like to struggle.
Efficiency. Like, you can still go hard.
Yeah.
And as long as you understand the variables and what you're doing. I always tell, and you could attest to this, you can give your take on it, but I think when you first start training, you should definitely practice training to failure, because you don't know what that looks like
100%.
When you first start training. You're like, well, what is failure, and how do I get there, and what does that feel like? Am I out of breath? Am I kind of breathing heavy? Like, how does that feel? No, it feels like you can't do another
100%.
freaking rep. You know what I mean? And so that's what true failure is. You don't understand how that feels when you first start out, but after you've been training for a few years, and if you've, you know, trained like us or people who train and do this for a living, you understand what failure is. And then at what point do you understand efficiency? Well, let me start optimizing how many days I train, the frequency in which I train, the volume in which I train, and let me start optimizing. Should I always go to failure, or should I stop 2 reps shy? Would you agree to that point?
I think yes, to a standpoint, because one of my coaches previously before Austin, he actually, when I asked him what failure feels like, his thing was, because bodybuilding is such a mental game, like, you actually targeting your muscles, contracting them the right way, it takes a lot of mental focus. So if you're not as physically exhausted, if you're not as mentally exhausted as you are physically, then you're not really training.
That's a good point. That's a really great point.
So when he said that, like, that's exactly what I tell my clients too, is if you can feel like mentally you're okay to walk out, and you're not like, where's my car type of feeling, then go back inside. or
Yeah.
you need to try that workout again.
Well, to your point too, I feel like when you're in the gym, and this is the mindset I've developed, I can make a 60-pound push down feel extremely hard. I was in Hawaii with my wife, and I it's funny that I'm remembering this, and we worked out a few times when we were out there on our honeymoon in Maui, where we also, found out we're gonna have a daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't find out, but I think we knew. Anyways, so we were in Hawaii, and we're training at the gym, and I was doing push downs with her.
Yeah.
And every machine is different. Just because it says 40 pounds doesn't mean it actually is 40 pounds, because every machine runs differently. So some feel smoother than others, which makes it then feel easier or harder than others. So I think at this machine we were doing, like I was doing like 60 pounds, 70 pounds, and like I was going very hard.
Yeah.
But the way I work out is just all focused on the contraction, the squeeze, the tempo, the execution. Am I feeling it where I need to feel it? And my wife has been, training with me for a long time now. At the time, like she's already made her, physical transformation. Right now she's pregnant, so I'm sure she's, has a whole another journey after this, right? That I'm gonna definitely be there for her to help her with. But we're at the gym and she was doing about like 40 pounds, 30 pounds in the machine, and she kept like slowly going up to my weight. And so obviously as a dude, you're like, ego's coming in the way. You're like, well, I can't have my girl lifting close to what I'm lifting, right? But
Tells her to go down.
yeah, literally I told her, I was like,
Don't raise that weight.
yeah. I literally told her, I was like, honestly, like you could go down, but if you want to keep going up, I guess you just keep going up. You know what I mean? Like but here's the thing, is because in that moment, I didn't realize that we're different in that aspect.
Yeah.
Like she still has to learn how to contract those muscles
100%.
at an efficient pace. So for her to do my weight or whatever, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Eventually she'll learn how to contract those muscles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I try my best to teach her and like help her understand, hey, like you don't have to, go heavier and heavier. That's not the only way to increase your intensity, right?
Yeah.
And so you're right, to the extent of if you end up doing like bodybuilding as a, complete, career or as a lifelong thing, you kind of have to really focus on the contraction. Or if you just like that form of training, because I also feel like people look at bodybuilding like, oh, like, I don't know. I feel like there's a negative culture around it sometimes. But I like bodybuilding training because not only is it one of the most like safest ways to train, but it's also very functional. 100%. I think functional is a very like overused term in fitness. Like, oh, this is a more functional movement. Well, what's functional for one person might not be functional for the other. If you're 400 pounds overweight and I'm telling you to do a clean and jerk, I probably shouldn't even be telling you to do a clean and jerk. I should probably be telling you to hop on a machine and do some chest press or do a seated overhead machine press. You know what I mean? So I feel like bodybuilding can be functional in a very positive way. You know what I mean? And the injuries are very like less. Yeah. So even if you're not like a bodybuilder, because I'm just saying this because I know everybody, might be hearing bodybuilder and think, oh, well, I don't want to be one. You don't have to be one to train like a bodybuilder. Like you can walk out feeling like you had some of the best workouts, some of the 100%. Best pumps of your life, and do bodybuilding training and never be a bodybuilder in your life. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And actually too, like I've been getting a lot more, especially with the whole New Year's and everybody wanting to be in shape, especially with summer around the corner. I've been getting a lot more in-person clients that are wanting to learn the actual proper ways of working out and making sure that they're being productive instead of just flowing through the movements. And one of the things that I tell a lot of my clients is it really doesn't matter how much weight you have on that, whether it's the bar, whether it's the machine. It's more in the sense of like how are you using it? Because your body doesn't know the difference between you doing 60 pounds and 30 pounds. You can make that 30 pounds feel just as much as effective as 60 pounds. It's just the way how you're doing it. Are you adding pause reps? Are you adding a slower contraction on the way down? It's little stuff like that that makes it more effective and, like you said, a lot more safer compared to you going in there and just trying to press 70 pounds for like 3 to 4 reps. A lot of people don't realize that. And you'll see a lot of people get more injured, or you'll see those guys in the gym like, oh, I used to look like you. He goes, but I got this injury. Oh, how'd you get that? By pressing a certain amount of weight that you shouldn't have been pressing. So that's one thing that I try to like preach to them, is more in the sense of It doesn't matter if you're doing 30 pounds because later down the road, a month from now, you might be doing 60. It's just more in the sense, get the foundation down, make sure you're actually benefiting from the weight that you're doing first and you're doing it the right way. And then, yes, overload the weight, but do it in a safer way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's better to be safe than sorry. And then your best ability is your availability. Mm-hmm. Like if you're not able to hit the gym, you're not going to make progress. 100%. So, I mean, I think that's a really good point. And so we're talking a lot about training now. When it comes to the nutrition side of things, what is usually something that your clients come to you asking when it comes to like nutrition questions? Like one of your most common questions that you get?
Do I have to eat chicken and rice all the time? That's
one of the biggest. Is it because you on social media, maybe you portray yourself as only a bodybuilding coach? So then they come to you and they're like, hey, are you getting me chicken and rice because you're a bodybuilding coach?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things is like, I think clients come to you when they can relate to you. They feel more comfortable in that sense. And I think that's one thing that I started doing a lot more this year is like putting out when I'm out having either a drink or two or having food, having specific, like whether it's pizza, stuff like that. Because if you automatically see me just putting chicken and rice, salmon and rice all day, you're going to be like, dude, like I can't do that. You know, people will go to you when they feel like they can relate more to you and they feel like they can trust themselves with you. And when it comes to clients, especially females too, with them having periods and with them having emotions to where some girls automatically jump into binge eating, some girls their safe spot is food for some reason. That's one thing is like as soon as I jump on a call with the client, I'm just like, hey, like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many times you train with me. Your nutrition is going to be everything. So once we nail that down, then we'll be able to really see the progress that you can make. And I'll tell them flat out, like, it doesn't matter if you have chicken corn tortillas or you have rice. As long as the calories match up and as long as you're continuously doing it, you're going to see the progress you need.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to kind of eat similar meals. Like I tell people this too. If you really had, you know, the finances and the money and you're so busy that you can't meal prep, just go to Chipotle all the time or go just eat the same thing pretty consistently
see how
throughout
your body
the week.
Responds to it.
And then if you're noticing, hey, I'm training hard at the gym, I'm gaining strength and I'm eating these things every week, just get lesser portions when you go to those same places. And that's an easy way to I didn't even have to do calories or macros. I just, you know what I mean? All I did was eat a little less, you know, and that's pretty much it, right? So I think no matter what, if you just eat similar things every week and then you go from there and you adjust based on the biofeedback, you're going to make progress.
100%.
You know what I mean? And so, and I think helping clients understand how to track calories, how to track their macros. So when you give them a meal plan, they don't look at it as just chicken and rice. They look at it as macros, carbs, there's fats, there's protein. And how can I manipulate that in order to make sure that I get progress, right? Because you don't want to sit here, hire a coach, have them give you a foolproof plan. Because that's what it is, right? As coaches, we're giving you a foolproof plan. And if you follow this foolproof plan, we're pretty much, you know, guaranteeing you results, you know, and I'd imagine that any good coach, if we guaranteed results and they didn't get those results, like we'd figure something out, you know what I mean? And because I know good coaches, you know, will want to make sure their clients get the results that they want, you know what I mean? And I know I'm somebody who I never shy away from saying, hey, like, let's figure this out. Let's extend this because I want to make sure you're happy before, you know, like you go off on your own and train on your own. You know what I mean?
100%.
And so I think that's just like those things are just so important to understand it as you're continuing to help your clients understand how to do their nutrition, you know, along with their training and stuff like that. So when you feel like when it comes to training and nutrition, what is your preference? Like what kind of split are you doing right now? And do you feel like it's something that you'll stick to for a long time, or are you still kind of messing with it right now?
It's actually funny. When push-pull first came out, I was just more in the sense of like, why? You know, I've always done like the whole bro split, like chest, biceps, or chest and tris, back and bis, legs, shoulders. Like I've always done the individual muscle groups. I never really did push-pull. So when Prob first like when he still lived here in town and he like said like, hey, I'm gonna start doing this push and pull split, I was like, doesn't make sense. Why are you gonna do it? But it was also more because my understanding of certain way of training wasn't capable of understanding that type of training. So now that's what I'm doing, and honestly, I I prefer it.
So does Prop tell you based off of frequency, that's why you're doing a pull push? Like, does he kind of explain to you why, hey, this is why we're doing a pull push? Or does he more so just give you the plan and are you just like, okay, whatever, like I'll just do it? Or do you kind of ask him like, hey, are you doing this so I can hit each muscle group twice per week or whatever?
I think from where I'm at now, it's more in the sense of like, what do I need to bring up the most? Right. So for him, it's more of I'm actually going to be transitioning into class of physique whenever I do plan on competing again. So right now it's 2 leg days, 1 back day. That's a lot longer than most are, and then 2 push days. And it's more in the sense of all the nutrients that I'm putting into my system now, put it towards the muscle groups that we're trying to grow. So I think that's when training plays a big role, is like how much are you eating and how much working sets are you actually doing. Mm-hmm. When a competitor is actually trying to benefit from certain areas that are growing.
Yeah. To kind of go off of something you just mentioned, I think it'd be a great conversation because I don't think a lot of people understand the difference between like warm-up sets, mm-hmm. working sets. What does that mean? I don't know. I know when I learned this information, it was new information to me. And so, I had kind of implemented this into my own training, and I've found a lot of benefit from it years when I learned how to do it. You know what I mean? So there's, straight sets, there's pyramid training, there's mm-hmm. reverse pyramid training, there's all these different types of intensity techniques. But working sets and warm-up sets are the foundation of a program. Mm-hmm. So kind of like I would love to just have a conversation about what those are, you know what I mean, in your perspective. And if I can just piggyback, what's the difference between a warm-up set and a working set, just for everybody else to learn?
A warm-up set, for me, what it looks like is if I'm doing, let's say if I'm going to do some squats, I'll start off with a plate on each side, probably get a good 8 reps in. And typically when I'm doing like a squat, I'm going to pyramid up into it. So pyramiding up is more in the sense of start loading up the weight, but minimize the amount of reps that you do per warm-up. And then once you find an actual weight, then start your working sets, but bump up those repetitions to however many you're planning on doing, whether it's a working set of 8 to 10 or whether it's a working set of 12 to 14. Just depends on where you're at when it comes to your nutrition. Mm-hmm. So for me, like if I'm doing a squat, I'm going to be doing a plate, probably 8 reps. Second one, I'll probably do 4 or 5 reps, but I'll do like a pause at the bottom to make sure that I'm actually getting a good amount of blood flow. And then when I'm done with the third one, then I'm going to jump into a working set. Whether I do a top set first or whether I do a back off set, the difference is a top set's typically the heaviest that you're able to do for a specific amount of reps, whether it's like 8 to 10, and then a back off is still a challenging and a working set, but it's a little bit lighter of a weight load than your previous one, and it's a little bit more repetitions. So it could look anywhere from like hypothetically 225 pounds for 8 to 10 reps, and then 195 or 185 for about 15 to 16. Mm-hmm. That's typically what would look like, whether if you're doing a top set and a back off set. Mm-hmm. So I think when I transitioned into that style of training, my physique started to actually develop a lot more, because now instead of wasting the energy that I had
sets before.
Yeah, because I used to do 2 sets of 15 to 20 to warm up that muscle group, mm-hmm. and then do like 3 sets of 8 to 10. Yeah. Me not realizing like your body can only handle so much. That's when a recovery comes into a big play. So by the time you hit that last set, you could have gone a lot heavier, but you couldn't because you just spent like so many repetitions trying to think that you were getting into that working set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's better to use most of the energy that you have mm-hmm. for those sets that actually matter, that are actually going to make a difference on your physique, because the warm-up sets aren't going to do anything. 100%. Doing 15 to 20 reps with 135 on squat, at some point is just not going to do anything. You have to up the weight, and you want to save most of your energy for the sets that are actually going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So I would also love your input a little bit on maybe like volume, when it comes to volume, reps, sets, stuff like that. Are you somebody who likes to do 4 to 5 sets depending, or are you somebody who likes to stick to about 2 or 3 and focuses more on intensity?
I stick to more about 2 or 3 depending on it, and just more intensity, but that's just me personally now because of where I'm at. But if I have a client, I'm not going to toss into a working set or a top set. If they've never worked out or they're barely getting the understanding of the movement, I'm going to keep them more on like, all right, let's do 2 sets of 12 to 14. Make sure you're actually engaging the muscle the right way. Mm-hmm. And then we'll do 3 challenging sets of about 8 to 10 and slowly build up into that. into that heavier weight and get you a good understanding of like what an actual working set feels like. And then let's say 2 months from now, 3 months from now, when they actually feel pretty confident in how they're approaching things, all right, let's switch things up. Like, let's actually challenge you a little bit more. Let's start doing more tops. Let's start doing more back off sets.
Yeah. Are you a coach who, this is just something I thought about, but are you a coach who takes pride in pushing a client so hard one of their first few sessions that they like throw up or something like that?
So me back in 2021, 2020, 100%. Now it's more in the sense of like, I want you to come back. I don't want you to be scared of me.
Yeah.
So no, I tell them flat out, honestly, like the way that I approach a first time personal training session with anybody, I would tell them flat out, I'm not going to push you to failure today. It's just more in the sense of like, let me see how your body responds to certain movements, certain exercises, and let me kind of play with your pain tolerance and see what you're able to withstand. Because I have clients that I know can push heavier weight, but mentally they can't. And they'll kind of like, no, Nate, that's too heavy. And I'm like, all right, in a month or now, you'll push heavier. But I'm more in the sense of like at your pace. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that I've at least had conversations when I've had clients come to me from different trainers, different coaches. There's a lot of people that will push you to make just the impression of like, damn, you got a good session and you were sore for like 5 days. That's not at all what I try to do. My thing is like, are you actually benefiting from this? And are you actually understanding why we're doing this?
Soreness isn't a good indication of progress.
It's not at all. And that's where I think like, I've had, like how I said, like I've had clients come from different trainers and they're like, well, I'm not sweating. That doesn't matter. Well, I was only sore for like a day. I didn't really feel it. And I go, that doesn't matter either. What matters is I'm very big on feedback. So did you go heavier than last week? Yeah. Okay, good. Did you do more reps? That's better. That's good. Doesn't matter if you're sore or not. That soreness is just an indicator that you haven't used that muscle group or you overly did it, you know?
Yeah. And especially if you're sore for over a day,
100%.
2 days, 3 days, that's a really good indication that you might have pushed a little too hard. You know what I mean? And so,
or you're not eating adequately enough.
Yeah, that's true too. You're not even recovering properly. And that was one of the things I told my client not too long ago, last week, because we had only worked out one time that week. And granted, it was the first time she's worked out in a while, and super easy. I have the same mindset you have. I never had the mindset to push somebody to that point of wanting to throw up. It's happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because, like I thought I was going very easy, and I am, but for some people, they're just not used to it. And everybody's different, right? So some people can handle more naturally. Some people come in and you tell them to eat a little something before and then they don't. You know what I mean? And so then they work out really hard and then they throw up. You know what I mean? But I've been somebody who like never took pride in something like that. Like I've always focused on efficiency, and I think I said this on the podcast with Jay Cordero, but about doing the least to elicit the most amount of progress. And I'm not saying be lazy and do nothing. You know what I mean? What I am saying is just be calculated about what you do to get the most bang for your buck. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to, feel like you have to do so much to get so much. At some point, you're going to cap off, and then where do you grow from there? You know what I mean? And so, I totally
one of the
agree.
biggest things of being a trainer and being a coach is when to know. If you know how somebody operates, like how they think and how they're, because we're all creatures of habit. So if you know that somebody's more willing to push themselves and will do it, you need to know when to tell them to pull back. And if they don't, and they're more in the sense of they need to be pushed, you need to know when to tell them to push, and when to say it's like, all right, like these are a couple warm-ups, these are working sets. So that's one of the biggest things to know as a trainer and coach, like I think, is knowing the person that you're training.
Yeah, I feel like knowing the individual, and that's really what it is. I feel like coaching is a physical, coaching is obviously a physical, what am I trying to, it's mainly a physical thing, right? Like you're helping people physically get fit, but I don't think people understand it's actually so much more individual, mental, like emotional, like there's all these other things that play a role.
You're a walking representation of your mindset. That's what I'm very big on, is more in the sense of if you see somebody that's, and this is no disrespect to anybody, but if you see somebody over 200 pounds, 300 pounds, you're automatically going to think, damn, they like eat out a lot, or don't prioritize their nutrition. They don't prioritize their nutrition, and that could just be more in the sense of because they have no like structure.
Yeah,
compared
Caleb
to like
just never has any structure, you know. I'm just joking.
He's getting his water intake.
I'm just joking. He's drinking his water at least. What were you saying though?
But if you see somebody that's in great shape and they're like, you look at them and you're like, damn, like they look like they have a lot of structure in their life, then you know that their mindset is on point. They probably wake up at a specific time. They probably eat at a specific time. And I think that's just a bigger one.
I think when you're fit, it says more
100%.
than
how you treat
than
yourself.
words,
How you treat yourself.
and how you treat yourself too. Like if you're coming into a room and you can tell physically, and then you don't have to be the biggest, hugest person, but you can just tell this is an individual who's fit, who takes care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain level of respect that comes from that, because not everybody's in that shape, or not everybody does that consistently.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if it was that easy, everybody would have it.
And also people do, I feel like, look at it as a bad thing, because in a sense you can look at it and be like, well, they're very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Selfish, because they prioritize.
And prideful and stuff like that. Yeah.
And it just depends on the type of mindset, I think, that wins from the person that's from the other opposite person and how they look at things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's mindset is so different because we all come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different things. And I feel like, you know, in my culture and we're always taught to like work hard, you know what I mean? And, you know, doesn't matter how you feel, you just got to do it. You know what I mean? And so do you what culture are you? What ethnicity are you?
My mom is Hispanic. So
Okay. Okay. So full Mexican. Oh shoot! There you go, dude. The Mexicans right here, man. Are you Mexican too? Nah. You're Ethiopian, right?
I'm Egyptian.
You're Egyptian.
I think that was a little racist.
Was it?
I'm Egyptian and Filipino.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have told Filipino.
Nah, it's not there.
It's like 2%.
I'm quarter.
But anyways, I feel like is that racist?
No,
I was
I think
joking.
it's just stupid. Yeah. Anyways, in our culture, we're taught to work hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Did you get that example from your mom?
I did. That woman doesn't know when to stop. But I think also too, like if we actually tie into culture, that's actually a conversation that I was having with a friend the other day. Because of what I do, and like what you do of personal training and whatnot, they're more in the sense of like, if you don't feel tired after the end of the day or you don't work long hours, then you don't work. So it was funny because my grandma was visiting and I was sitting on the couch and I was doing check-ins with a couple of clients, and she goes, "Mijo, are you going to work?" And I was like, "Yeah, Grandma, I'm working." And she goes, "What are you doing? You're on your phone." And I was like, I'm like checking in on a couple of clients, and they're like, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And it's not more in the sense of like, you don't want to tell your grandma, well, grandma, like they send me pictures of them like in underwear and like stuff like that. And I just kind of tell them how they're looking, and because to them they're like, that's not work. You know, I think the mindset of working kind of plays a big role, especially with Hispanics, because they come from waking up at 5 a.m, going straight to the fields, and then going to another job. Because that's how my mom was. My sisters raised me. She was always working. So like that relationship when I was younger, she was always. I don't want to say that I'm a hustler, but I do get the hustle mindset from her because she's always more in the sense of like, I need to continuously do something. But that's who person I do get it from.
Yeah, my sister is somebody who's very similar to what you're saying your sister is like. So she's always been somebody who was a grinder, you know, and she wasn't an A straight A student, but she was A's, B's, and in college she was like A's, B's, and C's because they still get degrees, you know what I mean? And so she's somebody who I look up to because of her determination. I remember when she was going to Fresno State, she wanted to take a certain amount of classes so she could hurry up and graduate, you know? And they were like, hey, this is too many units. Like, we're not going to approve this. We're not going to allow you to do this. So she took the initiative to go over that person's head to say, hey, I want to do this. And I think she had to go through two different types of loopholes and things in order to actually take those classes. And sure enough, she did, you know, and she ended up graduating, getting her bachelor's in business. And she was literally in school or going to her teaching, because she was also going to become a teacher. As she was doing her teaching credentials, that's when she got sick and stuff like that. But I always look at that version of my sister and think, you know, what would she do in this situation? You know, she would just push through. And I always remember being a kid and thinking, you know, I wish I was like my sister. You know what I mean? Because I was somebody who it took a little bit more from me to get specific things done, you know, or people were able to get things very quickly. I got them very slowly unless I was super focused on it, which I think is potentially like ADHD symptoms, you know what I mean? So that's something I'm struggling with or struggle with. But, you know, that's how I look up to my sister. So I remember when she was in the hospital, that's when I started my business. Because I was like, you know what? Like, my sister told me before she got sick, like, hey, like, you just need to get a job. Because at the time I wasn't working very much. You know what I mean? She's like, you just need to do something. And she was...
You have to be great at it.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And she was telling me stuff. And I was like, okay, well, you know, this Bath and Body Works thing ain't working right. I'm not really too passionate about the real estate thing right now. So I love fitness. I've helped people already. Like my wife at the time, I had already helped. And I already helped my friend Danny. Shout out my boy Danny. I helped him lose like 90 pounds. You know what I mean? So at that point, I was like, well, I liked helping and changing somebody's life. Let me give this a shot. And here I am still doing it. You know what I mean? And I'm able to talk to people like you, talk to people like Austin, and like have good conversations, you know, with everybody. And I would love to have Edgar on at some point too, because I think that he would just, you know, pour into 100%. The podcast. You know what I mean? And so, you know, all this to kind of say like, dude, thank you so much for being on the pod. Thank you for, you know, honestly, like,
grateful
taking the time out, you know what I mean? And just spreading positivity and information about not just nutrition and fitness, which is what we talked about at the later end of it. But also just chatting about your religion and who you are, why you're the situation, you know what I mean? And how that's actually a positive thing, you know? And it's good to have context behind that. So, dude, what's your @ one more time for everybody real quick? What's your @
At Nathan the Situation.
I'll never forget again. And do you have what, Instagram?
Instagram, I just stick to that.
You don't do YouTube?
I have been wanting to dabble with it, but I haven't yet. No.
Why, dude? You'd be such the personality, you know, that everybody would follow you and subscribe to you. And
I honestly wanted to do my first one this last show that I competed at, but I think I was just more in the mindset of like, you already know how you are during like the end of prep. Like the last thing you want to do is talk to anybody.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is entertain the whole camera, but that's something that I definitely do.
Yeah, you have a lot of knowledge to spread. You know what I mean?
Appreciate
and
that.
so, and also like from a place of, hey, you know, you like we're all just people at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And so all we can do is just try to help people like us, you know, because there's somebody out there who relates to us, kind of like you were mentioning earlier. But other than that, hope everybody has a very blessed day. That probably picked up on the mic. But hope everybody has a very blessed day. Thanks again to Nathan the Situation for coming on the pod. Remember to stay righteous and stay real. We out.